taking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's Memorial. Joining me to break it all down, Sia Nejad is here. Sia, hello to you.
Hello to you. We got a designated event, the Memorial. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to break down the top three, Rick, because I feel like that's going to be a pretty heavy discussion point on this show and really every other show that covers this tournament.
Certainly. I think the only golfers, I'm trying to think off the top of my head who's not here, Homa. That might be it.
Zalatoris, but that's an obvious one.
Zalatoris is hurt, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty strong despite the fact that this is, I mean, we just got done the PGA Championship 2 weeks ago. We have the US Open in 2 weeks. This is like the sandwich of all sandwiches to have an elevated event, and it's still going down with basically everybody here.
Exactly. And I see Brent in the chat. He says, let's go. Summer kicks off now, which is an interesting comment because I live in South Florida, so it's summer all the time. Is it summer now everywhere else? Like, it's just always hot here. Speaking of hot, before we went hot, Rick, the Miami Heat were a discussion point for us. So everybody in this town is on pins and needles because I feel like they know what's about to come and they don't know exactly how they're going to handle it.
Yeah, it might be tough. Might be tough in South Florida tonight to be up 3-0. Hey, at least you're the 8th seed. At least nobody expected you to get this far, but I do not think that they'll be able to sleep easy. I'm with you. First off, Brent doesn't know what he's talking about. Summer starts June 21st. So that is factual and true. It does not start right now. And I'm with you, Sia. It's 100 degrees in Las Vegas. Like I don't know what winter looks like.
Yeah, snow. I don't know what that is, genuinely.
Weird stuff. All right. Well, let's talk about the golf course. It's gotten some work done over the course of the past couple of years. Troy, if you could share my screen, that'd be splendid. There we go. My website, rickrungood.com, course key stats model. And Sia, Muirfield Village is, I mean, it's Jack's place. It's his crown jewel. He tries to make this. I mean, he designed it basically with Augusta National in mind. He wants it to be a very difficult test. It had gotten away from that in recent years. And then you remember, as the 2020 version of this tournament was ending, they were literally ripping up greens and getting work done. So they did a lot of restorations and renovations to this golf course, and we played 2 years under those new conditions. And as Jack wanted, yes, the course has gotten more difficult and kind of gotten it back to where he wants the winning score to be.
That's right. And it's really interesting because when it comes to difficulty, there's a lot of issues, right? That you're going to have like right away off the tee with water and just the rough being penal. And, you're going to have bunkers, as you approach. And I'm just curious because I see in the model, Rick, we have driving accuracy percentage at a pretty low mark, at least relative to like just the, strokes gained off the tee, which I understand one is part and parcel of the other. But I'm curious where you're going to go here, because I'll tell you what, when we look at this model and I see strokes gained tee to green, I've already looked at the weighted tee to green stuff on Rick Run Good, and I'm ready for that. Approaching the green, I see we've got 150 to 175, but as you look down, there's long approaches are very relevant at this tournament. It's the part that I can't get right, that I haven't figured out yet, is, am I just going off the tee? Am I going total driving? Do I have a lean towards driving accuracy because of that penal rough? I'm just curious where you stand on that one.
Yeah, so especially since the renovation, what you basically have are wide enough fairways, right? These things, they're not narrow fairways, but the penalty for missing the fairway is pretty steep. So it's not like you necessarily need guys who can hit it down a 10-yard corridor or a 20-yard corridor, but you need guys to keep it like in play, which almost leads me to like good drive percentage, right? It's kind of a different way to look at it. So there's going to be a lot of different ways to get it done. I think the penalty out of the rough is pretty significant, Sia. So I would lean accurate drivers, the longer the better, but I don't think this is necessarily an opportunity to bomb and gouge because 4 inches of rough and it's still a long golf course and you have to be very precise on the second shot. I would actually likely give up a couple of yards to be in the fairway this week, which is not the normal stance that I would take.
Yeah, and frankly, when you look at the leaderboards, let's just say over the last few years, you've got a mix of everything. You've got the accurate guys, and then you got some of the guys that sprayed a little bit. They're not super accurate off the tee, but they've made up for it in different ways. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, one thing I looked at again, I'm not trying to promote RRG here, Rick, but it's something. I was texting you last night. I was like, I'm so mad that you already updated the site with the Charles Schwab stuff, because that means I can't go to sleep yet. But the long story short there is one thing I looked at was driving accuracy, but then also not just greens in regulation, but distance. But I didn't really know where the cutoff was. So I made my own cutoff. But I'm looking for guys who can get it out there at least a little bit, that aren't super short, but also have the accuracy built in.
Yeah, we'll talk about him, but like Corey Connors, I think is a pretty good model, right? Like he's going to just be pounding fairways, and he's not short, right, by any stretch of the imagination. So like I think he's a pretty good model. Obviously, if John Rahm is going to hit every single fairway, he's going to be super dangerous, and it's why he's been dangerous around this place. But not everybody is John Rahm, which we'll talk about here in just a second. I will show you the scorecard while I have it handy. So the work that was done lengthened this place out, specifically on the par fives. The fives started to turn into a little bit of a rollover where these guys were taking advantage of it. They're now playing much more difficult. So it's 75-71 on the scorecard with a par 72, 2 5s on the front, 2 5s on the back. And you see the par threes, both of them on the front, over 200 yards. The par threes on the back are 180 and 220. So this is, listen, it's not a short golf course. See, like, and that's not just with driver in hand. It's going to be a lot of shots where you were kind of mentioning it, being able to hit from 150 to 200 yards, being able to hit it from 175 to 200, things like that, which it's just not a bomb and gouge wedge fest like we get a lot on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely so. If you want to look at the buckets, that's something you definitely want to look at. I have this year more than last year kind of stayed away from the buckets, but I kind of know who the long iron players are anyway. So I definitely, if you're breaking ties, or maybe I should put a little bit more emphasis on it, certainly wedge play versus 175 to 225, that there's a chasm there. You're going to want to focus between those two, for example, on the longer hitters there.
As we transition this conversation to the cheat sheet, I will remind everyone who has funneled in here in the first couple of minutes that the fan vote for the one and done, that link is now live. The link is in the description. Get your vote in. The fans hit Brooks, and you hit Brooks, I believe, Sia, at the PGA Championship, and it is gotten tighter. I believe the fans have surpassed me, so they're very much in the mix.
Yeah, and we got a lot of tournaments to go, and we got a designated event this week. I mean, what is it, 3.6 million to the winner? I mean, if you pick the winner this week, you are, unless you're Mark Immelman, you are, because he's in the lead, right? You are really, really catching up to the leader.
Yeah, let's hope Mark does not find the winner this week. So go get your vote in. We will do the Mega Preview Pod Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. So the votes will be tallied at that time. Okay, Sia, we're going to start naming some names here. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Get breaking news.
Big news coming out of the NFL today.
Highlights and instant reactions.
The largest final round comeback in tour championship history. We're down to the final four.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner.
CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
And we're back. Here is the cheat sheet, and it reveals 5 golfers over $10,000. Scotty Scheffler, 11.3. John Rahm, 11,000. Rory McIlroy, 10.6. Patrick Cantlay, 10.5. Xander Schauffele, 10.2. I said earlier on my YouTube channel, Sia, that this is probably the most fascinating $10,000 range that I can remember. Sometimes it's pretty clear where everyone's going and pretty clear where the pivots are going to be, but there's elite course history here. There's guys who are the best golfers in the world and in form. Like I love the 10K range.
Yeah, this is truly a great range. I do think I know, at least initially, where we're going to see ownership. I mean, we've been pretty good about kind of guessing right in terms of, where some of the ownership is going to collect. I think it's going to Scotty Scheffler and Patrick Cantlay for reasons we're about to get into, but those two seem to be the guys. I mean, especially when you get the narrative, and for the record, it's partially true, I think. When you get the narrative that you can be sort of team no putt at the Memorial, I think that lends itself even more to Scotty Scheffler, because we know the tee to green stuff is just unbelievable. Scotty relative to everybody else. Like, you want to look at Patrick Cantlay, weighted tee to green, let's say the last 24 rounds, it's great, but it's nothing close to Scotty Scheffler. So I just think people are going to want to play Scotty Scheffler. They're going to trust that he's going to be an okay putter. And Jon Rahm, you know, I think he's going to be third fiddle when it comes to ownership.
Well, Scotty Scheffler has now amassed 10 or more strokes gained from tee to green, which is an insane number, by the way, in 7 of his last 8. And the week that he didn't, he only gained 9 from tee to green. He has rattled off 14 or 15 top 15s in a row. He's been great here, or at least was great here last year. I mean, Scotty's the guy right now. You also mentioned how Patrick Cantlay is going to be catching some steam here, of course, this week, and for good reason. Cantlay is playing well. He's been one of the best guys in designated events this year, though he does not have a victory. And Sia, he has kind of the trump card when it comes to Muirfield Village history. I mean, he is like elite here, 2 wins. If you want to say he didn't deserve one of them because Jon Rahm had to withdraw in 2021, fine, but he still has 3 other top 4 finishes in the 4 other years since that. Like, it's pretty sick stuff when you start talking about Cantlay around this place.
Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, he didn't deserve to win in 2021, but okay, that's fine. Give him a 2 instead of a 1 there, and his history is still 3-2, 32, 1-4 over his last 5 years. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then Rahm, you can make the argument, obviously, not only did he win here, but he should have won the following year and then 10th last year. So they're all great players. Don't get me wrong. I just think when it comes to these 3, especially because of what we've seen the last few tournaments as it relates to Scotty and Rahm, that people are going to go to Scotty, people are going to go to Cantlay, and then Rahm gets sort of 3rd place. And then, you know, I do think Xander and Rory kind of get left out here. I think it's pretty clear that they're going to be the 2 lower owned of the 5. I got to be honest, I'm not interested in either of them. I'm not really trying to catch the ownership leverage there because I don't think it'll be necessarily super extreme. I'll do my ownership leverage somewhere else. Of the 5, though, and I know you didn't ask me this, I think I'm going with Scotty.
Okay, well, I have a follow-up question to that in a second, but while I'm showing this on my screen here, remember that there was also a second event in 2020 played here at Muirfield Village. It was the Workday Charity Open. It was the event they played the week before. So we played back-to-back weeks at Muirfield Village. It was a rare one-off thing because I think the John Deere Classic was canceled and they were adjusting the schedule. Cantlay also finished T7 at that event. So like when you look at pure course history as opposed to tournament history, it actually gets even better for Cantlay. The follow-up question, because you kind of mentioned, you said, I think that I don't want either one of Rory McIlroy or Xander Schauffele. If I made you choose, Rory is 10-6, Xander is 10-2. If you had to pick one of them, which way would you go?
It would be Xander.
Okay.
And it's I'm pretty decisive there. I just don't like what I've seen from Rory. I think Xander's going to at least give me the consistency that he's offered here at Muirfield the last 4 years, where, you know, he's a pretty safe bet to top 20, and he certainly has the upside to top 10 this thing, if not top 5. That's certainly what you're looking for if you're trying to roster him. And that's frankly why I'm not trying to roster him, because I don't think the win equity between Xander and the 3 guys that we've been talking about, I just don't really see it. So between the 2, I like Xander. I like the state of his game a little bit more, but I'm not going to end up playing him.
Last 4 years, Xander has finished between T11 and T18 each year at the Memorial. He is the cheapest in the $10,000 range. He's coming off an 18th place finish at the PGA Championship, runner-up at the Wells Fargo, a couple 4th place finishes before that. So form is certainly good for a lot of these guys in the top 10 or the top 5, excuse me, the $10,000 range. And Xander is no exception there. Let's trickle on down. The 9K range. Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Jason Day, Terrell Hatton, Justin Thomas, Sung Jae Im, Matt Fitzpatrick. What in the world are we doing with Colin Morikawa? Because it's been fine. It's been okay. I don't think it's been great. I don't think it's been exciting. The approach numbers are good, as we'd expect them to be. The results are whatever. He's going to get, I assume, a little bit of a bump because he won the Workday Charity Open in 2020 and finished runner-up at this event in 2021. But like, what are we doing with this guy?
Yeah, I'm not really doing anything with him. There's a couple guys I like in the 9K range. I don't think Colin's going to be one of them. Again, and I'm glad we speak to this on a DFS show. I don't think his ownership is going to be low enough for me to justify playing him at 9,900. Listen, if he was like 9,200, it would make a lot more sense to try to make it work with Colin Morikawa and let's say a 10K guy. But at 9,900, I'm just not super interested. If you want to play the team no putt narrative, that's fine. Like it could work out for Colin Morikawa. But then, he's not exactly long. Like there's just, I don't know. He's done really well here. So, certainly maybe it's a better course fit than I think, but I don't think I'm doing anything with Colin.
I hope he's 30% owned so I can just not be involved in this. I think I want to wait and see. When I saw him at Oak Hill, I thought, yes, he's still hitting a lot of greens, but it was not as flushed or as solid as I normally see Colin Morikawa hit golf balls, and it has me worried. So I would prefer like a very high owned Colin where I don't have to worry about it for DraftKings purposes. If he was like 7%, I'd have like a really serious conversation with myself. But I'm hoping I don't have to get there because I personally just don't really want to be involved. The rest of the 9K range here, I think is a little bit more interesting. How would you allocate your funds up in this section?
Well, I'll tell you, I've already put out a play on Tyrrell Hatton at 33-1. I mean, when you look at his stats, obviously he hasn't won, at least not lately. But when you look at his stats, you would almost think he would be higher priced. But again, he's Tyrrell Hatton, so he's not going to be. I love the finishing positions. I love what he's doing with the ball striking. Granted, it's not the spike of ball striking that you're going to see with somebody like Patrick Cantlay, but look at the short game. I mean, the around the green play 4 in a row, putter 4 in a row. He's smashing it with the ball striking, both on off the tee and approach. I not only think he's reliable, but I actually think he's got some win equity here. So I love Tyrrell Hatton.
He actually rates out fairly well on like longer and difficult golf courses as well. I mean, you can see the designated event, or at least the hard golf course results. T15 at the PGA Championship, T3 at the Wells Fargo, T19 at the RBC Heritage. You go back a little bit further, runner-up at the Players, 4th at the API, 6th in Phoenix. Those are all either majors or designated events. Then he threw in the T5 at the Byron Nelson as well. So he's playing some of the best golf that we've seen him play in quite some time. He is $9,300. He has not played this event since 2019 when he finished 33rd. So kind of a blank check when it comes to tournament history. Is it safe to assume Victor Hovland eats a lot of the ownership here in the $9,700 range, just a generally popular golfer who's playing great golf right now?
I don't think so. I actually think Colin and Victor don't get a lot of ownership. I think the thing about Victor is him and Colin are sort of in a weird range where if you decide to start your lineup with one of those top 3 guys, it's really hard to justify taking Vic or Colin. And I think a lot of people are going to start with one of those top 3 guys. By the way, if you were to roster, let's say Victor Hovland and Scotty Scheffler, it's going to leave you with, I believe, right around 7,200 or so, 7,150, 7,200, which is not a ton to work with. And I think the around the green play, even though it's not been horrific with Victor Hovland, that narrative is going to hold for him. And so it's going to be one of those things where people are going to shy away from it. And by the way, if you look at his history, I mean, of all these guys in the 9K range, when I looked at Victor, I was like, okay, I can get around the green stuff. But I looked at the history and I'm like, man, this guy's not even top 40ing this tournament. That's kind of strange. Maybe he just doesn't have the eye for this course.
Yeah, he did sneak in a 3rd place finish at the Workday Charity Open, but I will caution people, those 2 weeks, I mean, they played entirely different. I mean, 1 week was pretty easy. I think the winning score was, I don't know, 17, 18, 19 under par. And then they just absolutely let the golf course go nuts for the Memorial and just beat these guys up. So worth mentioning and keeping that in mind. Okay. Is there anybody else here? We've got Sung Jae off a very rare back-to-back miscut. We've got Fitzpatrick coming off of a miscut at the PGA Championship. I personally am starting to gain a little bit of steam on Justin Thomas. I think just kind of the pendulum has swung too far. The narrative has gotten too bad on him. And it's not like, if you think Colin Morikawa has an interesting stat profile, you have to think that Justin Thomas has an interesting stat profile. And Justin Thomas has won more recently than Colin has.
I totally agree. What's so interesting about Justin Thomas, though, is he's still getting ownership. And I wonder, and by the way, I think with Victor Hovland, I think there might be some Victor Hovland fatigue there too. And so I think that's why, even though he's done just fine, I think that's why you might get some ownership dropping off of him. But with Justin Thomas, he keeps he keeps being in the 8,900 range, and now he's 9,200. So it's kind of the same thing. But he's always getting rostered. I think the last time he played at the PGA Championship, wasn't he like 17, 18% or something like pretty high?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And the truth is, like, I know I want to play, like, I like your argument on Justin Thomas, but hopefully the ownership is now going to drop down a little bit. And if it does, I mean, he would be, for example, a pretty great pivot off of what I expect to be a slightly popular Tyrrell Hatton, if not very popular Tyrrell Hatton, because I think people are going to want to play him for all the reasons we talked about. So I don't mind Justin Thomas, but if he's going to be like 15, 16%, it's just an absolute no way. And the same goes for Colin or Victor Hovland. If I can get ownership leverage in this particular range, I'll probably take it. But Justin Thomas, we haven't seen it from him yet in terms of the leverage.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that as the week goes on and see what those projected ownership numbers are going to do before this thing locks on Thursday. We will continue this conversation into the $8,000 range and beyond. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
All eyes are on Italy
Absolutely astonishing.
as the race to qualify for Europe
Huge moment.
all comes down to the final match day.
It's a goal.
Stream every pivotal Serie A match live on Paramount Plus.
Still some really good names in the $8,000 range here, Sia, anchored by Jordan Spieth at 8,900, Cam Young, Hideki Matsuyama, and Sam Burns up top. Then the bottom half is Ricky Fowler, Sahith Theegala, Corey Connors, Wyndham Clark, Shane Lowry, Adam Scott, and Siwoo Kim. So I think there's a pretty significant drop-off after this. When we get to the $7,900 range, I think win equities fall off a cliff. So this is kind of our, in my opinion, last crack to get somebody who could actually win the golf tournament.
I agree. I'm going to start in the mid 8K range with a guy who's probably going to be a little popular. I mean, he closed last week so strong. Ricky Fowler at 8,500. I mean, he's been popular for a lot of people for good reasons. The weighted tee to green is very good. Weighted approach is good. And the around the green play is good as well. So I think Ricky Fowler at 8,500, it's a good price point. It's not amazing, but it's a good price point. I like that. Corey Connors, another guy that's going to pick up a lot. Like, listen, he was only 7 or 8%, which was crazy at the PGA Championship. I mentioned him on this show. I didn't realize he was going to be so low owned. I actually thought he was going to be somewhat popular, but he wasn't for whatever reason. But I think people now have sort of caught on that Corey Connors might actually be like a pretty good golfer, and he fits the profile.
He's definitely a good golfer. So here's the thing. I never would have played him at 10,100 the Valero Texas Open. I just think that's pretty insane for a guy who at that point had one win. Now he proves me wrong, and that's fine. But like getting him now for a couple of $1,000 cheaper, still playing great golf, played great at Quail Hollow, T8 there, was in the mix until he kind of, faded a bit over the weekend at Oak Hill. But this is a good course for him. It's a really good course for him. And the short game's been a lot better. He'll likely keep it in the fairway, which is going to give him a significant advantage over the rest of these guys. Like I mentioned, he's just much cheaper now. This feels like a much better spot to roll out Corey Connors, not needing a win like you needed at 10,100, but just like go finish inside the top 10. Like go do something like that for me.
That's exactly right. And for the record, if you're not watching us on YouTube and you're not seeing what Rick has put up here, he's gained ball striking 6 in a row, which shouldn't really be a surprise to anybody. It's Corey Connors. But what's interesting is that he's gained around the green 2 in a row in 3 of the last 5, and he's gained with the putter in 5 of the last 6. Yeah. So this is not the Corey Connors that we sort of knew and loved a year or two ago that was going to give some back in the short game. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen here, but I really like how the short game is trending. So 8,300, I think, is a very good value. And for the record, I think other people are going to think that too. So be ready to pivot if it gets completely out of control. But I do like that. 2 other names, Rick,
sure, that
I think are going to be sort of less on the radar than the possibly chalky guys I just mentioned in Ricky and Corey. Sahith Theegala, at 8,400, who has good history here, so he might pick up some ownership. But I really like the weighted tee to green numbers, the weighted approach numbers around the green. He can absolutely pop. So he's got the short game and the ball striking. The problem is he is erratic with the ball striking. And so if you're going to buy into the narrative that you just want guys that are going to keep it in the fairway, maybe he's not the guy for you. But I do think Sahith Theegala at 8,400 makes some sense, particularly in tournament lineups. And then the last guy, Rick, is Siwoo Kim. I don't know if he's going to pick up ownership. I don't think it's going to be heavy ownership. It's a nice price at 8,000. Really good history here. Weighted tee to green looks really good. Weighted approach looks really good. And he is one of those accurate guys that's likely to be keeping it in the fairway.
3 straight top 20s, T9 in 2021 for Siwoo. I don't disagree with either one of those. I will exercise a little bit of caution on Cam Young, which this on paper should be a pretty good spot for him. But I'm worried. If you remember, Sia, we got this Cam Young slump to start 2023, and a lot of it was just these weird big losses in short game categories, which is unlike him. And then he rights the ship and he, makes a deep run at the match play, plays well at the Masters, and we think all is good. I think he might have slipped into it again, right? Like he lost 4 strokes putting at the PGA Championship. He has not been good putting or around the green in his last 3 or 4. I'm worried that this is something bigger.
I'm worried too. I mean, he was definitely on my radar a couple of months ago, repeatedly. Every tournament he was in, it was something that I wanted to play. I don't think I'm going to play Cameron Young this week. I mean, listen, he does have some win equity, obviously. But this range, I would rather play right below him. I'd rather play Hideki Matsuyama right now than I would Cameron Young.
Here's Wyndham Clark's stat profile if you're looking for that. So misses the cut at the PGA Championship. Not the worst miscut I've ever seen, but does indeed miss the cut. Had won at Wells Fargo previously. He's having a great year. It's always interesting to kind of see how guys react after getting kind of that breakthrough win. So we'll see. We'll kind of see what happens here with Wyndham Clark. But I wanted to show his stat profile. He is $8,200 if everybody starts loading up on Corey Connors. We'll see where Wyndham Clark shapes up. That range, Sia, I believe is where I believe we have already spoken about the winner, right? Or we have already through, I think it is a pretty significant decrease from Wyndham Clark, Jordan Spieth to Russell Henley, Tom Kim, Keegan Bradley, et cetera, et cetera. Emiliano Grillo's here. He obviously won last week, but you get my point. So the 7K range, I actually feel like is where it gets a lot more difficult and where these GPPs are going to be won and lost.
Totally agree. And by the way, when it comes to the 8K range, it's hard not to like anyone in that range. And I point that out because I do think a lot of teams, DraftKings teams, are going to start with either Scotty, Cantlay, or John Rahm. And that's going to force them to really maybe go in the 9K range or maybe go in the 8K range, maybe take 1 or 2 guys. I think if you wanted to just be risky in tournaments, and it's tough because the win equity is locked up in those top 3 guys, maybe top 4 if you want to include Rory, top 5 with Xander. But if you were willing to start your lineup in the 9K range, even like the low 9K range, and you were able to get 3 8K guys in your lineup, all of which have some win equity, not only is your lineup going to be probably a little bit different, but you're going to have a lot of guys who are really likely to make the cut. So if you do the low 9K game and then 3 8K guys, then maybe you can, with your next 2 guys, like the upper 7K, mid 7K range. It's just something to think about. Don't always just start your lineup with one of those top 3. If you're making multiple lineups, maybe change it up a little bit and make sure your roster construction is at least a little bit different. There's other ways to get different. It's just something I thought of in that moment.
Yeah, good advice there. I mean, this is, I actually, again, I said it earlier, the way that the 10Ks and the 9Ks are shaping up, I'm going to find this to be a pretty interesting ownership week and roster construction week. There's a lot of these weeks. It's okay, yeah, everybody's going to do one of these 2 things.
That's right.
And it's going to be decided by 2 guys in the 7K range. And this week's there's 6 different ways you could start your teams. And then you got to figure out what you're going to do in the 7K range. So I think it's interesting.
And people aren't going to be able to resist their natural tendencies, which is to grab that one of those 3 guys or, whatever it is. There are going to be those collection areas. And even on Wednesday night, there's not really going to be an adjustment. There's going to be a lot of 9K guys that are really low owned. There's going to be a lot of lineups that only have 1 or 2 8K guys in them. There's going to be a few collection areas in the 7K range. So just be aware of that. There's a lot of talent from 8,000 and above in particular. So there are guys that can pop. There are guys that can just take down this tournament that you're not expecting. So if you're making a lot of lineups, you have to factor that in. But back to the 7K range, Rick, a few guys that I think are not going to be hyper popular that I'm going to mention. One is, this is tough because I was big on him last week. He ruined actually a really, really good lineup I had. It was Denny McCarthy. He's at 7,600. Last week, he was at 8,700, I believe. I really thought it was a good time to spring on Denny McCarthy at relatively low ownership. I will say, though, his weighted approach still looks pretty good. The around the green game is good. We know he can pop with the putter, and he's accurate. So he's one of those guys that I don't think is going to have a lot of ownership, that he certainly doesn't have win equity, but I do think he has top 10, top 12 equity if he can be the Denny McCarthy that we've seen before. So
yeah, I like him a lot.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I do. I
Awesome.
like the trajectory that he's on. He's still a very
Yeah.
good putter, but he's getting better from tee to green. So, Denny has always had a very narrow path to the top of the leaderboard because he has to just putt his brains out. And now he still has to putt well, but he doesn't have to do it as well because the rest of his game is getting better and he's not losing that flat stick magic. Finished 5th here last year. So, yeah, and besides the miscut last week, he'd been awesome. So, yeah, no, I think that's fair.
I thought I was super smart, just like overloading on Denny last week, and it did not work out. And I had, I think it was in one of the 33 single entries. I had a 5 out of 6, and if Denny had done some damage, it had a lot of the players in there that I needed. But Harris English, speaking of last week, he had a bad Sunday, but he was very good otherwise. He's gained ball striking in 3 tournaments in a row. 2 of those tournaments, a 12th place and a 3rd place finish. Around the green play is excellent if you want to factor that in, which you should to some degree at least. And the putter can get hot. So weighted tee to green, weighted approach, distance, accuracy. He really actually checks a lot of the boxes. I think we might be getting a deal on Harris English at 7,500.
So I will say when Harris English is at his best, when he's healthy, when he won, tournament champions, and then he won the Travelers, he did it. It was like this, just gain across the board, be well-rounded, not have to do anything crazy with any one facet. And that's what he did for a long time. And then he got hurt and was working through a lot of stuff. We're starting to see that again, Sia, which I think is, it's exciting. Now, yes, he gains, a bunch of strokes on approach by making an ace or whatever, but that's, one swing and the rest of his game is rounding into form over multiple weeks. So I think it is certainly fair based on what we know about him and based on getting back to his DNA. So he's at 7,500. The other guy that I thought was interesting here in the $7,000 range is Ryan Fox, who, I mean, when you go back-to-back top 25s at Oak Hill and Colonial, 2 pretty different golf courses. Like, I like the versatility of that. And he was playing well on the European Tour for a while, starting his year. So he's been playing good golf for a long time here. You can see a bunch of top 20s on the European Tour, and then now starting to get his feet underneath him. So he withdrew from RBC Heritage, and his 3 most recent PGA Tour events that he completed were T21 at the Charles Schwab, T23 at the PGA, T26 at the Masters, and he can freaking move it, man. This guy bombs City, USA.
So this is an interesting sort of case study. There's a lot of guys that I like, and I even have like a little list right here that can move it, but that are just not very accurate. And he's one of those guys. If you go back to the cheat sheet, Rick, and you look, I believe it's 49.3% when it comes to accuracy. And I just wonder, I mean, his greens in regulation isn't bad at 64.4%. Obviously the distance is there and everything else is pretty much there for him, especially with the ball striking. I just wonder how you factor that in, or if you factor that in.
I just think that we're at a point on the board where, you're not getting long and straight anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you're not getting long and straight and another asset. And I'm giving up straight for long and good approach play and solid enough around the greens and good form, right? Like he does not check off every box, but he checks off enough boxes at this price.
And that's how you should play DFS, frankly. I mean, that's like classic tournament stuff where you're just playing on the upside more than anything else. So I hear you on that one. There's 2 other names that are like more conservative names, I think, that won't be super popular. I think KH Lee is interesting at 7,300. Weighted tee to green looks really good. He has a little bit more distance than people think. And I think that's obviously going to play. It's not like he's super long, but he has a little bit more distance than people think, which I think is a factor here. And then the other guy, and as we look at his profile, I mean, the approach play could be a little bit better. He's 7,300, but the ball striking has been pretty good for him.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, hasn't missed a cut since the Players. Sorry, who was the other guy?
The other guy is a guy I was big on last week, and it kind of was okay. It was Christian Bezuidenhout. He's another guy that off the tee, he's just not going to get it out there. But on approach and with the putter, he's been very, very good. And we see the consistency on approach. It's been excellent. Around the green play, a little erratic. But, I don't know how much upside Bezuidenhout has. So that's my issue there. But he was somebody I played last week. Obviously, this is a different course. But at 7,200, he's somebody I'm considering.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm just trying to look through the rest of the 7K. Taylor Moore withdrew, so do not play him. He will be removed from the player pool, but I think that's fair. What
Another thing to point out about Seabez, that's a lot easier to say, is his history is pretty good. You know, the last 2 times here, I think it's the only 2 times he's played here, a 37th and a 22nd finish. And let's see this. So you do this so fast. So we see how he did it. He did a lot of it with the putter, a lot of it on approach. So literally that's the profile I just talked about.
Yeah,
so, I like how this is kind of working out for him. They're not amazing finishes by any means, but that off the tee number is just so bad. But he lost 5 strokes off the tee, Rick, and he finished T22.
No, and what you said is like this is how he does it. This is his DNA. This is how he plays. So like this is not on you. I like it when guys play to their baseline. Like that's what I want them to do. That makes this a whole lot easier. It doesn't happen a lot, but when they do, it's a good thing. It's not like basketball where LeBron just puts up 27, 7, and 7 every night.
I want to ask you about 2 guys.
Okay.
One is your boy, Cameron Davis, coming off a miscut. And the other one is Billy Horschel, who I'll just tell you right now, I'm not going to play, but has like very, very good history here.
All right, we'll start with Cam Davis. This was a very, very disappointing miscut. He was quite popular. He was actually playing well for a while and then kind of punted it all away on Friday afternoon. If I were to just look at this stat profile and see somebody who gained 2.5 strokes with the ball striking and lost, 2.5 with the putter, I would say that this is not the worst miscut I've ever seen, especially because it is very much within his range of outcomes. I mean, look at his last 5 starts. Lose a stroke and a half, miss the cut. Gain 10, finish T7. Lose a stroke and a half, barely make the cut. Gain 12. Lose a stroke and a half. What's he going to do? Gain 11 strokes this week and finish inside the top 10? Like that's within his range of outcomes. So it's really hard to say that was disappointing or it was out of character or anything like that. Okay.
Well, what's interesting, Rick, is, and I think I'm in on Cameron Davis. If you look at this profile here, where he gained a lot of strokes total, the Players, RBC Heritage, and the PGA Championship, all talent-rich designated events, right? So, I do think that's interesting. We see the pattern kind of on again, off again, which I'm not really going to I don't really look into that any more than what it already is, but there is something to be said for him elevating his game at these elevated events.
Yeah, and then the other one, Billy Horschel, I'm cautiously bullish on. I think I might have said it to you, or I've said at some point, like I was with him for 9 holes on Tuesday at a practice round, and it wasn't at Oak Hill, and it wasn't very good. He missed the cut. He's starting to putt better again. I mean, he's been in a pretty deep slump for a while, but he's starting to putt better again. He's a very, I don't know how to describe it, and it's not based in stats, but he's like a very weird guy who gets up for weird events like the match play and the Zurich, and he takes a lot of like pride in defending. And I think there's a weird chance that he can kind of start to put it all together a little bit here. I would not be buying Billy Horschel long term, but I think if I can sneak in, kind of buy the defending champion low, hope he gets a hot putter, I would prefer to do that.
I will say this, when it comes to him, you never know when it's coming, but what I did do is I looked back. He had a 9th in 2019, 13th in 2020, and 1st place in 2022. That is an elite track record here. Yeah. But I did look into his sort of like lead-in form coming up to those tournaments. It wasn't anything amazing, but it was a lot better than what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, he missed the cut. I mean, he missed the cut at the Charles Schwab before he won this event last year. And he had a 68th at the PGA Championship, which is kind of similar to what he's done. But like, you're right. The 10 starts before that were a lot better than the 10 starts before that that he has right now, which have been pretty disastrous. So it's, I think, an interesting 1 week only buy low spot. And if he burns us, like, we never have to worry about Billy Horschel for like a year.
That's right. I'm out on Billy, but I totally respect the idea of going to him here because he's got to be comfortable here one way or the other. I mean, the 13th, 9th, and 1st is pretty great.
Yeah. And, he's a weird guy. And I mean that as a compliment. He is a weird guy and he can kind of turn it on and get playing well.
If you meant it as a compliment, you would have said unique, but you said weird.
Weird is good, man. Right? Weird. Like, I don't care. $6,000 range. Yeah. So we've got some names here. A couple of guys who are playing well. Don't get me wrong, but I'll cede the stage here. Sia, where do you want to spend in the sixes?
I understand this is a designated event, but I'm definitely willing to take some chances in this 6K range. There's a lot of guys that I like. Just like last week, there was a lot of guys I liked as well. I'll start with Eric Cole. Weighted tee to green looks good. The around the green play is very good. Not super accurate, but again, we're not necessarily going with super accurate guys off the tee. So it's just something to keep in mind there that I want to point out. But Cole isn't a guy that I've really been on, and that's to my detriment. There have been a lot of tournaments where he's really popped, but I can't ignore what I'm seeing with the weighted tee to green numbers, and I like the short game, particularly around the green. So I like him. A guy I played last week that really paid off for me, and I was mentioned on this show, by the way, Kevin Streelman. He's again in the mid 6Ks. I believe last week he was, 6,600, I believe. I can't remember. Maybe it was 6,500. He's 6,700 this week. Weighted tee to green looks pretty good. I will say at the Charles Schwab, he did most of it with the putter, but he's gained ball striking in 5 out of 6 and has gained around the green in 5 in a row. So he's not going to give you that oomph off the tee, but he's just kind of doing it right. The old Kevin Streelman path is alive and well right now. So I like him. 2 other names to mention, and then we can kind of bandy back and forth, Rick. One of your guys, I think. He's not one of my guys, but I might adopt him soon. Austin Eckroat, again, weighted tee to green, weighted approach. Bad around the green, but he's got some distance and accuracy that's very good too. And then finally, I'll mention Mark Hubbard. Accuracy, good greens in regulation, great approach, decent history, recent form is solid.
Yeah, actually played great on the weekend last week. I mean, and he's been this whatever Mark Hubbard has kind of found on approach. He has these couple of weeks where he'll go nuts, and he's doing it again. 7.3 on approach at the Charles Schwab, gained a little bit at the PGA, gained 4 at the Wells Fargo, gained another 7 in Mexico. That's his last 4. That's obviously great. You mentioned Eckroat. So I lump Eckroat and Justin Suh together. These are 2 guys that were highly touted out of college, right? Large expectations, and it's taken a little bit longer than I think everyone would have hoped for, but now they're starting to figure it out. Eckroat's been great. Justin Suh is a great putter who's starting to figure out the rest of his game. He's got back-to-back top 25 finishes at the PGA and the Charles Schwab Challenge, and he's got a bunch of good results here. He missed the cut at the Byron Nelson, but outside of that, it's been, even despite some of the ball striking concerns, he's been able to make the cut and he's been able to play well enough. So those were the 2, kind of some younger, highly touted guys who are starting to play better again. Those are the 2 that had my attention the most.
I also want to mention a couple guys I had on my list that I didn't mention. I'll mention Chez Reavie just because he's 6,200 and Lucas Glover also 6,200. Glover actually has some pretty solid history here, and it kind of lends itself to the whole team no putt argument. But the 2 guys I actually wanted to mention more than anything are Matthew Naismith at 6,500, and I believe Akshay Bhatia is also 6,500. Both rate out pretty well for me.
Yeah, so let's do Akshay, because I don't think we've talked about him for a while. Okay, so 4th in Mexico. Okay, so he's made 3 cuts in a row. 4th in Mexico, T43 at the Wells Fargo, 56 at the Charles Schwab, hitting it well, all over the place with the putter. But that's talk about young, highly touted guys with raw skill sets. Akshay certainly fits into that conversation as well. Thought there might have been one more. Sam Stevens has been pretty good. Yeah, $6,500.
I've been playing him. There was something I saw on him that I didn't like. It might have been the accuracy, which I'm probably willing to forgive. There was something. It might have been the around the green. It was the around. He's actually really bad. Let's look at his around the green numbers, because I love Sam Stevens, but this may not be the course for him.
Yeah, let's check real quick. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, if you like guys that punt it on and around the greens, I got a guy for you.
Oh yeah, the putter too. That's not great.
No, it's really not great at all. Yikes. Okay. Well, we've learned. Anybody else here?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, I think there's some players here. I don't know how many 6K guys are going to make the cut, but I definitely think if you're making, let's say you're doing like the $3.20 max, I definitely think there's room to make a lot of your lineup. I'm assuming that's not your total budget if you're doing that. If it is, then you operate how you operate. But I think there's room in maybe some of those 20 maxes to work in quite a few of these 6K guys and just have a rotation where you have a few lineups that have like 2 6K guys, maybe mid 6K guys. And that's going to allow you to do sort of some of those different roster constructions that might have 2 9K, 2 8K guys, but also maybe you grab a 10K guy and a high 9K guy that doesn't have the ownership, then you can still probably go into the 8 and 7K range and then grab your 2 6K guys. So I definitely think there's some guys here, especially the ones we mentioned, that have some upside.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. We will suspend the logic and reason portion of the show, and we will enter the Strokes Gain narrative portion of the show, which is a fun little game we play where you can submit lineups with any narrative that you want, and we will read them here on the show. So, Troy, let's see where we can start here. So, Rebecca says, let's get patriotic for the memorial. Oh my. These look like lyrics, Sia, that are intertwined with golfers' names.
That's right. Is this like America the Beautiful? Is that the name of the? I should know this.
That sounds about right. So, oh, beautiful for Scheffler skies, for amber waves of day, for purple mountain majesties above Patrick can't lay. America, America, God shed his grace on Lee, KH, and crown thy good with Kucherhood from Suh to shining sea. That's pretty good.
Okay. That was excellent, Rebecca. She is making a run at a maybe not the top spot, but she's making a run at a top 3 spot. She's new and she's been crushing it, and it's Memorial Day. Very well done. That is Strokes Gain narrative to a T there.
Noah, I believe, is also new, is he not? Wow.
Yes.
We are spreading the word. Okay. So Noah knows what's going on. He says the memorial is all about milkshakes. That is true. Milkshakes and handshakes. Noah then opts for malt Kucher. Bacon Day. Have you ever had a bacon milkshake, Sia?
I have not.
No, neither have I, but sounds great.
It does not. It does not sound great.
Choreo Connors.
That sounds delicious.
You go to McDonald's, you get a Choreo McFlurry. I like the M&M McFlurries. Straw Billy Horschel. Christian Banana How. That's pretty good.
Excellent.
And Sepp Stracciolate.
I think is that for chocolate, like Stracciolate?
Oh, Stracciolate.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I was thinking these aren't all milkshakes, but I don't know. They're close enough for me. They're drinks of some type. I don't know where bacon comes from in all of this, but I do appreciate.
There's got to be a bacon milkshake.
I'm sure. I went to one place that had a bacon flight. So it was like 12 pieces of bacon, like you get a flight of beer, and each strip piece, whatever, was different. And they brought it out like on this huge thing.
America the Beautiful, indeed.
That place probably has bacon milkshakes. All right, Troy. Oh, the fantasy bunker. Ryan says, I was like, what is he talking about? He's off. So he says Dublin is also the capital of Ireland. So the connection here is that Muirfield Village is in Dublin, Ohio. So that's the connection here. So here are a few other European capitals, not cities, capitals. Ryan starts his lineup with Amsterdam Davis. Nice. Paris English. Oh God, I'm going to butcher this one. Reykjavik der Havland. Brussels Henley. David Berlingmerth. And Stuart Helsinki. Pretty good.
Do you know which countries those are the capital of? And I'm partially talking to the chat as well.
All right. So Amsterdam is
Netherlands.
Thank you. Paris, France. Reykjavik is like Iceland.
That's right.
Okay. Brussels, Belgium.
That's right. Nice.
Berlin, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Helsinki, Sweden.
Close.
Finland.
Yeah. You got it. That counts.
I knew it was Scandinavian. Brent Harris rounds us out here, and it is not short on emoji. So he says Jack is the gold medal, golden bear. Modern PGA Tour players need element/animal nicknames too. So he has done that for us. How about Platinum Cat? Who is that?
I actually don't know.
I don't know who any of these are. Who's the
wait,
Cat?
what is that?
Who's the Emerald Sheep? Who's the Pearl Wolfhound and the Sterling Silver Kangaroo? Oh, wait, hold on. Well, the Platinum Cat, I guess, could be.
You know what he's doing? He's just dishing out nicknames. He's not assigning the nicknames to any golfer. Brent, you're on probation. You're on a 1 week probation.
These are just okay. He says they are Can't Lay, Platinum Cat. That doesn't make any sense. Emerald Sheep is Lowry. Sure. Pearl Wolfhound is Powers. Sterling Silver Kangaroo, Adam Scott. Okay. Diamond Koala, Jason Day. Iron Mountain Goat is Straka. These are either the most creative nicknames that are so far over my head, I will never understand them, or Brent needs to go back and redo his nicknames, one or the other. Probably the first, honestly. They're probably great.
It's the second. But Brent, thanks for always submitting he was the one who did the video strokes gain narrative from a couple months back.
No, he is they're good nicknames. I just don't get the connection to the players. You could be our Sia, you could be our Emerald Sheep.
I'm going with that from now on. I'm the Emerald Sheep.
Sia the Emerald Sheep Nejad.
That's right.
Boxers always have good nicknames too.
That's right.
Yeah, we got to get that.
Sugar Shane.
Iron
Mike.
Floyd Money Mayweather. Anything else? We have pretty much run the gamut here.
Well, who's going to win, Rick?
It's so annoying. Like Scotty, probably.
Yeah.
I know it's not fun.
I actually agree with you. I think it's probably going to be Scotty too.
Like, what am I supposed to say? The guy, like, I don't know, Scotty or John, probably. I mean, Cantlay could probably, like, it would make a lot of sense for Cantlay to break through this year here, right? He's played great. He's been the best guy without a win this year. Would not be surprised at all. Would not be surprised if Justin Thomas won, honestly, right? But if you ask me to pick one name, I've kind of planted my flag in Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah. I'll be like almost like somewhat surprised. I'm going to bet other players. Obviously, I've already bet Hatton, but if Scotty, Cantlay, and Rahm, if one of those three isn't one of the two down the stretch on the 17th or 18th, I'll be surprised.
That's the thing with Scotty too. Even when he hasn't won, he's been in the mix. He was one shot out of the playoff last week, right?
The bad ball striking round you showed us on Rick Run Good was a T12. Like that of all the last 9 or 10 tournaments, the bad ball striking one for him was a T12.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So I don't know. I'm not gonna go away from that. Okay, we'll be back Tuesday, mega preview pod, then round by round recaps Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Big thanks to producer Troy, does all the hard work behind the scenes. Right there, Sia Nejad. You can find him on Twitter at Sia Nejad. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.